It's time for the 1430 Connection on 1430 WNAV and 99.9 FM, spotlighting news, newsmakers, and important community issues. Now, with this week's edition of the 1430 Connection, here is WNAV news anchor Donna Cole.
Welcome to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. Today I have the pleasure of speaking with Delegate Shaneka Henson. And Delegate Henson, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Donna, for having me.
I was covering a protest in Edgewater. It was the second or the third of, there were actually two protests before it that joined together as one, and then this was the third one. It took off from South River High School. People went down Mayo Road, down Solomon's Island Road, looped back around to the Anne Arundel County Police Department Southern District Station, and that's where I heard you speak. There were a lot of people speaking that day, but that's where I heard you speak, and that was a very powerful moment. Did you know what you were going to say, or was that all off the cuff?
I didn't, Donna. You know, I saw the flyer for it on Facebook, and I thought, I'll go check it out. When I saw that it was going to be a Black Lives Matter march in Edgewater, Maryland, I said to myself, I have to go and see what this is about. I remember as a high school student going and taking a night school class at South River High School. And Edgewater can be so different than being just a few miles north up in Annapolis. So when I went there and just had the experience of marching with everybody that participated, and it came to the final finale there with the group circle that they do at the end, and then one of the organizers gave me an opportunity to speak, I just spoke from my heart.
It was an amazingly powerful speech. And let me back up for a minute. So for those that might not know who you are, in late April of 2019, the Anne Arundel County Democratic Central Committee picked you, then Annapolis Alderwoman Shaneka Henson, to take the seat of the late House of Delegates Speaker Mike Bush. In May of 2019, Governor Hogan appointed you to the position of delegate. That made you the first African-American woman to be sworn in as delegate of Maryland District 30A. That includes that little sliver of Edgewater where that Black Lives Matter protest march was held and where the two other ones before that were held. Since I had been at the other two marches and now this one too, I saw this too. You said, I have attended marches in places where there has only been fun. Today people have said go home, get a job, only white lives matter. But you continued to march and you held your signs high. I saw the way white people looked at you when you walked down the street. And you said each of you has put yourself at risk to be ostracized. All of that is true. I saw many people in support of the protesters in Edgewater at all three marches. But I did hear at two of them, go home, get a job. And you called it out. You said Edgewater can be so different. Is that what you mean about Edgewater being so different?
Different in a number of ways. I mean, Edgewater it can be more rural than Annapolis. Annapolis is much more metropolitan. Edgewater is more spread out in terms of its landscape. There's farm communities that are there in the Edgewater and surrounding area. Mm-hmm. Edgewater, it doesn't have as many shopping districts and commercial properties as the city of Annapolis does. Edgewater doesn't have as much diversity as Annapolis does. Even when you just take kind of what can be a snapshot of a community when you look at its public schools, Edgewater has much different composition in terms of the students that go to the public schools that are there than the public schools that are up in the Annapolis cluster. And so when I saw that it was going to be a Black Lives Matter march there in Edgewater, I really wanted to go, if for nothing else, than to just be supportive of people who were going to come out. But I got to tell you that I wasn't prepared for what I saw and what I heard. When you are that close up with people, you really get to just see people's expression. You get to feel people's emotion, and to see people intentionally slow down the pace of their car, to yell something just nasty and aggressive at someone, to see people who were at work at their jobs at some of the establishments that we passed along the route take the time to put down their tools that they were working with, to yell something aggressive at someone, to see, I saw a parent who had a child and she grabbed her daughter and shielded her eyes as though she were witnessing something obscene when the procession walked by. And I thought, oh, wow, this is so different than what I have experienced in Annapolis, where it has been such a showing of unity from not only the people who have been a part of the protest, but people who were passersby and people who just were casual observers. So I'm glad that I got a chance to go. And as you said, it is a part of the district I represent. 30A goes all the way down to Mayo Road. And so to be able to go down and touch that portion of the district, it was something I'm glad I got a chance to do.
The people that were being racist, the people that didn't understand why people protest. These people were not the majority of people that you encountered in the protests, or were they?
I would say absolutely there were more supporters than there were detractors. And I think that that's always the case. People who are not in support of something are just far more vocal. But I think that sometimes what we allow that to do is to put water on the passion that people have for doing something great and for bringing progress and change. People who are a small minority of folks just get really vocal about expressing their concerns or expressing their discontent with people when they stand up for change, and people who would otherwise really express what's in their heart, and that's to see people treated fairly. That's to see us really move forward in the country. They really kind of just get scared about making progress, and they second think the thing that they know is right to do when they hear someone else stand up and just be all too vocal. So I was glad to see people continue to march on, continue to not have any second thoughts about doing what they knew was absolutely right and standing up for what they came out there that day to declare and to say.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole. Today I'm speaking to Delegate Shaneka Henson, representing Maryland District 30A. You were born and raised right here in Anne Arundel County. You grew up in Annapolis, yes?
That's right, Donna. Both my parents are from the Annapolis area. My mom and dad, my mom always says that there wasn't a time that she didn't know my dad. Their dads were best friends growing up, so they grew up together. Families were very close family friends, and so parents from the area, aunts, uncles, everybody here. So Annapolis, born and raised. I always say that most people want to grow up and move away from their hometown and like get as far away as they can, but I love this area. I love living here. I love, all the things about it. So, yeah, hometown girl.
You didn't go too far away for your bachelor's. Where'd you go?
I got my bachelor's from Coppin State up in Baltimore City. So I first went to college in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And so I was there for a year and a half at Central Penn College up in Harrisburg. And so after being there for the first leg of college, I was really homesick, and I thought, let me see where else I can go.
Then you went to University of Baltimore School of Law, admitted to Maryland Bar in 2010, and then started your political career in the city of Annapolis, where you became an alderwoman, and then moved up to the state. We are having quite a moment of time here in the United States, in the world, and hopefully it'll be a transformative moment of time. We've already seen some things happen. There's much more that needs to happen. There's much more that has always needed to happen. Do you think these changes will finally start to come to end the racism, the systemic racism that we've always had here?
I'm hoping so. I am cautiously optimistic because I know that the changes that we need to have happen are, I think, a bit larger than most people are probably anticipating. We need to change hearts and minds first, and I think that is the work that we're seeing happen in the streets and in the protests, with people really starting to look beyond the barriers that we have placed on each other. But once we get beyond that, that's when we have to do the true work of balancing the scales, and I hope that people will continue to stay on that same page of unity when we have to make sure that we are fair and equitable in this country. So I'm going to remain hopeful. I think that that's the only way to do this job, but it's a heavy lift, and I hope that we can maintain the stamina.
As a politician, have you or have your legislative goals changed as a result of what we've seen in the United States over the past few months, whether it's through the police brutality, the continued issues with racism and the Facebook Karens that we've seen, whether it's the disparity with COVID numbers in Black and brown communities. Have you changed your legislative goals or your personal goals as a result of these past few months?
Donna, I love that you just in that menu of things that have happened, the Facebook Karens have got a nod in the menu.
How could they not? But how could they not? You know, how could we can't ignore what happened in Central Park? We can't ignore.
We cannot. You're right. We cannot. You're right. I appreciate that you mentioned that, because I don't know that we evaluate danger. Everything is not a punch to the face or someone pointing a gun at you. Weaponizing is something that we have to reevaluate. And so I love that you mentioned that. I would say that if anything has changed, it is probably my estimation of my potential longevity in a career in public service. I have always approached this with looking at getting the most progress that I can for the goals that I set when I came into it. And I didn't know what that meant in terms of how long a voting majority in my hometown that I love would want to continue to return me to office. So I always was very realistic about getting as much as I could as with the time that I had. But now that I'm the first Black woman to hold this position, and I don't think that it's because there haven't been Black women who were capable. Black women have run for this office who could have done an amazing job at it. But we have erected artificial barriers in front of people and not evaluated them fairly. And I know the things that the communities need who are here, who are underrepresented and have been, and I have had aggressive legislative agendas to bring those things forward. And so I knew that if I was unwilling to compromise on it, that could have meant a short career for me. And so when I look at what people are now understanding and realizing on a national level, I am rethinking about what that might mean in terms of how long this is something that's a possibility for me. Last session, I had a bill to put statewide standards in place for the remediation of mold, to have standards for indoor air quality. We have the largest concentration of public housing of any of the legislative districts in Anne Arundel County in District 30A. 42% of the rental housing in the city of Annapolis is public or subsidized. When I put that bill in, the fiscal note came back, and it was over $1 million. The committee chairperson said, Delegate Henson, this fiscal note is too high. You cannot get this bill passed. Nevertheless, I had my hearing, took it to the appropriate committee, and there was no political will to pass that bill. One of the mothers that came to testify is a young Black woman who lives in public housing who came, and Donna, when she testified, she said, I live in my house. There's so much mold, I cannot breathe. And as I heard people across the country say, I can't breathe, it's written on T-shirts. It is something that is echoed by people across the world now. And I thought Tamika Wright came to the House Environment and Transportation Committee and told us back in February that she couldn't breathe because of the mold in her home. But there was not the political will to require statewide standards for indoor air quality for residents who can't afford to pay for the private remediation of mold, to make their landlords put standards in place to care for their indoor air quality. I always knew that I would push for measures like that, but I didn't know if there would be a voting majority that would support a delegate who was making those types of strides. So if anything has changed for me, it's me reevaluating what my longevity might be with this position. By profession, I'm an attorney, and so I always have kind of kept one eye on when the clock might run out for me on delegate, because people might say, "Oh, that's too much progress."
Too much progress. Yeah, I guess.
So now I'm not placing those limitations on myself.
Good for you. We'll be right back on the 1430 Connection. Welcome back to the 1430 Connection. I'm Donna Cole, talking today with Delegate Shaneka Henson, talking about her thought process with goals, legislative and personal. So what does this mean for you? Or do you feel like you want to stay in state government? What's next? You can break the news here.
Yes. So for us, right now, the Speaker of the House, Adrienne Jones, she has a task force together that's looking at police accountability and transparency. And already the work that's coming out of the task force, I am not on that task force. The Attorney General's office has put together a task force of folks who are looking at our rental housing, our homeowners, all things that relate to housing in Maryland. So I'm a member of that group, and that particular work group, we're looking at what's going to be next on the policy horizon for housing in Maryland. We know that this month a lot of the protections expire. The federal moratorium on evictions and foreclosures, that expires this month. And we know that whenever the state of emergency is lifted by the governor, that the stay on evictions, foreclosures, and repossessions that's statewide, that expires as well when the state of emergency expires. So it's going to change the landscape of housing in Maryland. We know that our district courts get over 50,000 filings each month of evictions. So our chief judge of the district court, Judge Morrissey, he's already anticipating a slew of evictions that will be filed, and there are already filings that are being placed on the books now for all types of debt collection and lien actions to enforce debt collections against people who have not been able to keep pace with obligations during the economic crisis that came with the health pandemic of COVID-19. So that task force that I'm a member of, we are looking at how we support and shore up the housing market, because it is not just on a consumer side that we have to be focused. It's really a landscape that you have to look at. Our commercial property owners are an important part of the aspect as well. We have to have a 360 model that really takes care on both ends. So I'm excited about the work that's going to come out of that. And then on the same token, the work that's being done with the Police Accountability and Transparency Task Force in the House. I mean, on day one, they were looking at some things like a glaring gap being that there is no requirement for body-worn camera footage. There is no retention policy for it. There's no way that it has to be kept centralized, no reporting mechanisms for it. So just putting some statewide standards in place to make sure that we have integrity behind the different policy work that's being done on local levels is something that we can do from a state perspective that I think there's a real will to make sure we get it done. So I think it's going to be a dynamic session coming up in 21.
How about you personally? State government forever, or have you thought about, and don't tell me you haven't thought about it because I know everybody thinks about what's next, do you want to go towards the federal level?
You know, when you said that federal level, that kind of just made a traffic jam in my mind. Like, I think about Congress and how, gosh, maybe it's just because the current composition of Congress and, you know, the very top of leadership on the federal level that just seems so undesirable right now. But I cannot say that looks like something I desire over what I have now. The House of Delegates has a group of people who are just dynamic, and coming in for me as the new kid on the block, I have really found colleagues who just day one were ready to work with me, who were just people who I found real camaraderie with, and who were ready to help me get the job done and be effective for the district that I represent. So I could not imagine at this time giving up that for a Congress that just has not been the picture of effective policy making at this time. So
I can't thank you enough, Delegate Henson, for taking the time out of your day today to spend some time with me.
Thank you, Donna. I appreciate it.
This is Donna Cole on the 1430 Connection. We will see you next week.